Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be in the world. You have tuned into the live stream for Talk About Your Community, brought to you by Clocktower Advisors. I'm Todd Nilson, your host. I am so glad you're here today. This is our second stream of the week. I am really excited about this, and it would never be possible without the help of my able engineer, Kalisa Mikkel, who is incredible and helps keep me organized and keep me sane. Thank you, Kalisa, as always. If you are tuning in here for the first time, Talk About Your Community is a semi-weekly stream, about every other week, where we bring in people who have different things to say about community building and the practice of being a community professional. But really for anybody who's in the communications field or who is interested in how to be a better human, I guess. Try to connect to others and have some fun. It is a live and open conversation. So if you have joined us live, you are more than welcome to add your comments, ideas, questions to the stream in LinkedIn or YouTube or Twitter for that matter. We'll see them and we do our best to respond to everybody. If you happen to tune in afterwards for the replay, we absolutely keep watching the comments as well and try to respond to everybody too. If you're catching us on YouTube or you check us out afterwards, we're trying to build the YouTube channel up to 100 subscribers. I'm just shy of the 50 mark right now. So if you can help me out, drop by and subscribe and like the videos there. I would be most grateful for any of that help. Our topic today is International Community Day, and this is a somewhat new event. I think we did our first one last year, and it is a celebration of community building globally and those people that help make communities grow and thrive. And as my guest today, I am happy to welcome back my friend, colleague, and co-builder of this event, Tanja Laub. And Tanja, welcome. Tanja is from Walkabout Media. Well, so great to see you again. Thank you for making time in what's rapidly becoming your evening, because you're based out in Germany, correct?
Yeah, hello. Good evening from Cologne. It's just around 5 p.m. over here. So
It's so good to see you. Tanja, I know it's been a while since you've been on, but for our guests, why don't you tell us a little bit of your origin story? How did you get involved with community building in the first place, and then what keeps you interested in it?
yeah, love to do so. I actually work in community management since 2006. So quite early on, even before the people knew what the term is all about and what kind of weird things we are doing there. It started at the first day of an internship. I always want to get into the media business, working for TV stations, things like that. And I was at a TV station, but in the online department. And the first question was, who's taking care of the user emails and all the messages that are getting in? Because we were trying to build the German YouTube. So my hand went up. And so from the first day on, I was not only taking care of all the messages from the users, but I also built up the whole internal structure, everything you need. I was taking care of the moderators. I was taking care of the users. So before knowing it, I was doing community building. And I stick to it until today. I love to bring people together to explore new cultures, to get to know new cultures, and to see what happens when like-minded people get together and inspire each other. And it's really fascinating to see how you can kind of set a frame to help and enable people to do that. And yeah, that's what I love about it.
I always think it's such an interesting thing. I don't know of anybody who purposefully set out to say, I want to be a community professional. I want to be a community manager. We've all ended up in this space a little bit by happy accident. But I think it's amazing. Like, my original orientation was as a journalist and as a literature guy. But I always loved, trying to, bring people together, have groups, and it's that same love of trying to connect people so that they have meaningful interactions and they grow and become better people, as a result of those sorts of things. It's always a joy to hear people in their own words talk about why they ended up in the space. So
Yeah, interesting that you say you want to become a journalist, because I was writing for a local newspaper as well. There was also field I was exploring.
something else
And
to share.
yeah, it's quite interesting because when you walk that path, it seems like you're doing so many different things and they are not connected at all. Like I studied business administrations. What I never want to do, I was actually waiting for a journalist place to go and study journalism. And then at the business studies, I got the opportunity to major in media and communications management. And that's when my thesis and everything I wrote was about websites and usability and content and emotions and how to get it all together. And so going that path, it kind of looks like you're doing what you like to do, and it's kind of a weird way you're walking. But in hindsight, you realize that everything is connected, and it seems like you had a plan altogether, even so you hadn't.
That's so true. I always joke with people, this is like my fourth or fifth career, that I've had. This is the one that sticks, because I've been at it the longest, for sure. Well, almost the longest. I was a recruiter for a long time before I moved into this space. But you're right. I mean, I feel like as you're taking your journey and the kinds of work that you do, you pick up lessons, you learn things that then you reapply in a different career context, often. And so even though, like, I sort of wended back and forth between academia and then the recruiting world, and the time that I spent in those spaces, and before that as a journalist, the things you learn about storytelling, about connecting to people, about asking good questions, those things all come with you, through that experience. Um, but wow, you beat me into the community space, formally by some years. Although I was living in and using online communities, as far back as about 2000 or 1999, maybe. My formal entry wasn't really until about 2012, 2013. So you've got me beat by about 6 years.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like I said, I was still working in sort of recruiting, for many of those years. The first, well, I'll call it act one of my professional career was as a recruiter. And but recruiters, I often maintain, are community builders. They just don't necessarily realize it or think of it in those terms, because you're spending time meeting people, connecting with them, but then, like, you've always sort of got like that full network in your head, and you're trying to figure out how people either relate to companies where you're placing them, or how they relate to each other and what value they might get. So if you're anything above like a transactional recruiter where you're just trying to throw resumes and get people into jobs, if you're playing the long game at it, you can actually get, pretty good at being that community builder.
That's really interesting. I never thought about it like that way, and I've never seen the connections between it. But you're right, yeah. And I think it's the best way that you don't have a straight part into the community building. Um, I think it's actually good that most people don't go and say, I want to be a community builder, because we need so many skills. We need so much knowledge of different kind of areas and experiences. So it's actually a good chance for us, a good opportunity, if we have so many other things before that and learn so many things. Like, I mean, we need marketing, legal, tech, content. There are so many overlapping businesses and themes we need. So it's actually quite good if we have to look a bit into them. And Yeah, to have the knowledge like what you just described as being a recruiter and having that whole network and how to intertwine them in your head.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I feel like we're leading up to a commercial here for one of our attendees on the stream. We've got Adrian Speyer from Higher Logic Vanilla on the stream, and he just did a check-in with us. Hey, Adrian, great to see you, man. For those of you who don't happen to know, Adrian just came out with a book. And Tanya, you said you just got yours in the mail today, right? The Accidental Community Manager. Adrian, if you want to drop your link to the book out there, I'm totally cool with that. Anything to support you, my friend. Yeah, I'm eager to get my copy. I think mine might be coming today in the mail. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, wonderful, wonderful stuff. So why don't we transition a little bit and talk about the purpose of the live stream, which was to get people excited a little bit about International Community Day. Do you want to maybe give a little bit of context and background? I know you've been more involved with it this year than I have been. I know I'm going to be an active participant in it, but it'd be great to hear in your own words, sort of how that came about and what we're looking to do with the event.
Yes, it's actually quite cool that Adrian is here because I think he doesn't even know it, but he played a part in why International Community Day is here today. 2 years ago, on October 8th, there have been so many community events. So I was first talking on an event in Tel Aviv. And right after that, I talked at an event that Adrian organized in Montreal, both virtually. We never would have done if the pandemic wouldn't have been there. And there have been a couple of other events on October 8th. So Georg Holzknecht approached me and said, Tanja, it's International Community Day today. There are so many things happening all together today. And I said, no, it's not. It's just a coincidence. And there's no such thing as International Community Day. We have Community Manager Appreciation Day in January, but that's it. And he said, okay, that's weird, but we need one of those. So let's create it. And yeah, that's how he got the idea. That's how Adrian is involved because he organized that event back then. And coordinated for an October 8th. And that's why we choose on that date. And yeah, got a few people together and asked around in our networks, who wants to join, who wants to be in. I mean, you have been one of those people who said, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. Let's do it.
Well, and the reason that I said yes and that I was enthusiastic about the idea, I think there's it's easy to get a little cynical and say like, well, there's Community Manager Appreciation Day that's in January. There's CMX. There's all these other community events that are out there. However, I feel like so much of the community building, especially if we think about online community building, that exists both corporate and nonprofit, B2B, B2C worlds, so much of it tends to be US centric in messaging. Not that there's a problem with that, but like if you even look at the numbers from like research that comes out of Community Roundtable or CMX, it's like the numbers are something like 70% of the stuff is happening in the States, maybe some a chunk of it in the UK. But I think what we're seeing is a worldwide awakening to the potential of community building, which I find is exciting. Also has tremendous potential. And I wanted to support something that had a little bit more of a global point of view. That was one reason. Mm-hmm. And I'd be curious to get what your reasons were to throw in with this as well. The other one that I got really interested in was I think largely due to the pandemic and sort of what happened in 2020, and then all of the volatility around just social unrest, governments kind of leaning more authoritarian, just people feeling a greater sense of volatility and uncertainty about the world and everything that came out of that. I feel like leaning into and having an emphasis on community building as a mission for us all is incredibly important. There is a social contract that ties us together. We are all trying to live together in this little blue dot of a world, that we live in. And life's too short to live in outrage, and to be dealing with rage algorithms and big social media. The stuff we do in community, little c community, I think is so critically important. And that's, for me, is the reason for International Community Day and thinking about its importance.
Oh, I love that. I really do. It's actually hard to add anything onto that because that's kind of the global mission you just described. That's awesome in the world we all live in. Yes, you're right. We all need communities. We are all connected and we should all help and support each other. Um, for me, there are actually two reasons for International Community Day. The first one, as you said, or the ones why I joined or decided to be in it, and I'm sure there are many more reasons why that day should exist. And the first one is, as you said, a lot of the countries are centered to themselves and to their research there and their communities, and they are not looking at what's happening in the rest of the world. I always loved to do that. And I mean, I traveled to CMX, I traveled to Australia to Swarm, and I've been there and I connected to people. And I think that's really important because when you talk to the people, you realize everywhere is kind of the same. We're in different stages, but we are doing the same and we can learn so much from each other. We just need to talk to each other and to exchange. So I really want to support to get connected globally. And the other thing is, I love it that people can go and apply and say, I have something to say. I want to show you something. It's not that someone is organizing a conference, and I love those conferences, and is deciding what's getting on a program. But over here, we have the opportunity that usually people who are more silent come and say, okay, I would like to show you something. And this is my opportunity to present something. And I hope that just many more people take this opportunity and show what they have to tell, because that's always the most interesting thing. How is it working for you and your community? Um, we are working with people, we're interacting with people, and everyone is different. So every community is different, and we can learn so much from every community, no matter how big or small as it is. And I want to make these voices heard and seen. And yeah, so it would be cool if everyone just joins in and to celebrate.
I think that's beautifully said. And thank you for adding that. And it made me think, like, as we're talking about this, and you and I live a lot in sort of the online community building sort of world. But I feel, and I'd be curious about your feeling about this. I'm feeling like increasingly we're talking about community, just plain community. It's not about online communities anymore. It's about these mixed experiences of both live and in person. We got pulled away from that a little bit when in the pandemic, but I've increasingly felt like online community exists to reduce geographical distance and reduce time distance between people, but it is largely a utility to mitigate those factors that keep us apart. But coming together as groups, that's something we do naturally as humans. And I think we're just getting better at it because our technology should be enabling us to draw together a little bit more easily.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of changing. Like ages ago, we only had the offline world and the offline communities, all the sports club and school clubs and whatever. And then we had the online communities. And now it comes together, and I think it really, well, it's always the best if you have something from both worlds. Like if you have an online community and then you have local meetups, you get to see the people face to face and really meet them in person. But I prefer and still love to talk about online communities with the add-on of in-person events.
Yeah.
Kind of have the hub as the online community, and the rest is gathering outside around it. Because I think it's a complete different thing if you build it online or offline, and where your main focus is. When you and building it online has so many more challenges and makes it much more exciting, because a lot of the time all the communication is text based. You don't see the other people, you don't know the other people, so it's much harder for you how to set a frame and to bring the people together. You have to see, I mean, the technical platform, it's not your community. Even people often think there's the platform, you have a community, but it
Right.
shouldn't be a barrier, to so that people are not actually using it and taking part in the community. So you really have much more work to do, and to see, now you just use the word usability as well, how to get the people active and that they engage. And
Mhm.
that's what I love about online communities, what's so different from the offline world. I love to bring it together, but I still think it's really important that we talk about those special challenges that we only have in the online world, and to have the positive aspects and the add-ons from the offline world.
Absolutely. Our friend Amadou Diallo, who was on the show just last week, he had a great comment to say here. The physical plus digital is definitely the future. Thank you, my friend. That's great. I think you're so right to call out sort of that dynamic and sort of the challenges of online communities, and certainly that attracts me, to them as well. And I'm very intrigued with the ways that new technologies are coming into play, like metaverse or virtual reality, kinds of settings, to further chip away at some of the friction of getting to know others in online environments. I think that's super interesting. I'm also really interested in that dynamic that you mentioned about between the physical and the virtual, of like, where does it start, or what is the hub? Is the community hub first online and then it's supported or enhanced by live meetings? Or does it start as live meetings and then is it further supported by the online? I think the dynamics between the two and sort of like which starts first has a lot to do with the way that you run your community. And I'm really interested in exploring that a little bit further as we have more experiences around those kinds of situations. So speaking of the local, I'm curious. You're based in Germany. You do a lot of work, I assume, in Europe, maybe elsewhere in the world as well. I don't want to make an assumption about that. But what is your experience about how well Germans or Europeans in general are embracing the idea of building online communities? I'm kind of curious about that.
It's really interesting to see that it's quite different from the countries. Like the Netherlands, the UK are really far advanced when we talk about communities or online communities. And always when I talk to my international colleagues, I felt far behind in Germany. Because digitalization over here, it's a nightmare. It's hardly non-existent. Um, and we do have great online communities. We have really good ones that exist for a couple of years now, and which are really good. But I always had the impression that the other countries are so much more advanced, especially in the external community sector. And they are doing so many more things. In Germany, we have those older, established communities, but there wasn't a lot happening in the external space. And then we do have a couple of really, really good ones internally, where I have the impression that the rest of the world, just through to the pandemic, realizes, oh, we can do what we do in the external world also in the internal world. The pandemic kind of fast forwarded the internal community management by 20 years, also over here. And it's really because usually you only see the external community examples from other countries, but you don't see that many of internal community management around the world. And I think that's where we in Germany are more advanced.
And just to put a quick gloss on what you're talking about with internal communities for those who are maybe joining in who are new to the world of community talk and the jargon that we use around that, the internal communities, we're talking about digital workplaces, like the private spaces where your employees collaborate and get to know each other and have interactions. That's what you're talking about. So
yeah, sorry, it's kind of when you're in your world, you're just using your
totally.
word.
No, I totally get it. So I love that space. I do work in internal communities as well, and I feel like in the internal digital workplace communities idea, either it's not very well publicized, or the space just hasn't moved forward as much in public consciousness as external communities have. I think you're right. Certainly there are some thought leaders in the space, like Rachel Hoppy with Engaged Orgs. She's amazing, an incredible person doing some really great thought leadership in the space. But like for every Rachel that I can point to in the internal digital workplace, communities, there are 5 or 6 thought leaders in the external community space. So we're a little behind in that world, and you're absolutely right to point that out. As I can only think of like one German-based company that has some big visible external online communities, and that would be like SAP. That has like a big partner community that I know of, and that used to do some work with them, some years ago. So it's really interesting to see how it's developed, and I'm intrigued that like the Netherlands and the UK have been able to be pretty advanced on the external community side too. Of course, I know a friend of the show, Matthias Vleming, who's often visible guy at community events, and was with Open Social, and is a great guy based there. Of course, I have a lot of friends and colleagues out of the UK as well. So very neat, very neat. So I guess what else is exciting for you in the community world right now? Are there any kind of technologies or areas where you kind of have your eye on at the moment that you're excited about? What keeps you intrigued day to day in our space?
I mean, we always lived in a fast moving world and everything changed pretty fast. But even so, we got to a standstill in the last 2.5 years. I do have the feeling everything accelerated and we are moving even faster and faster. And nowadays, no one really knows where we are headed and what's happening. Like first with the pandemic, and there you knew at some point it's going to have an end or we will have a way to work around it. But now over here with the war and kind of the energy crisis, you have no idea what's going to happen and how that's going to impact the companies and everything that's developing. So that's the one thing that's kind of to watch out for at the moment. And the other thing, you talked briefly about the metaverse before, and that kind of scares me a bit. Like 2 weeks ago, there was an event in Cologne. It's called Digital X. It's kind of a world forum where companies from all over the world come to Cologne and present how far advanced in digitalization they are. There was a robot that could make tattoos on your arm, even so the person doing the tattoos was sitting at the other end of the world.
Wow.
There was a 3D printer who was producing vegan meat, all that kind of things. And there I went on a tour of the metaverse, and they had only a picture of you, just one still, one frame. And out of that frame, they made a whole video where you could talk every language in the world. So I could have
Oh,
talked Korean or Chinese or whatever, even so I never knew one word in that language. And so on the one hand, it's really interesting and intriguing to see what you could do with a technology so far advanced. But on the other side, thinking about deep fake videos
yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything that's going in the world and all the harassment, and we already have to fight against in community building already today, it kind of really scares me to think about what's going to happen with that. Because it's getting harder and harder to actually see and identify what is fails and what's a real video. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's
I,
scary.
I feel I feel and empathize with your nervousness about potential misuses of that technology. At the same time, I can't help but geek out about the idea of um, the video communication like we have right now, where we're across the world from each other, is if there were a layer that could have me speaking to you in my native English, but you hearing me speaking to you in German, uh, and then you talking to me in German, and then I'm hearing you in English. I mean, I could see like tremendous potential for something like that, especially bringing down cultural language barriers and things like that. Where we don't necessarily didn't need to know that second language, but we've got something that's basically translating for us, and hopefully it's translating in a responsible way. At the same time, like I'm really worried about deep fakes and like being able to put words into other people's mouths. And then how do you tell what's actually real online at all?
Yeah, I really love what you just said about hearing the other person in their natural language, because over here, often people don't like to engage in an English-speaking community. Even so, when it's just writing and text-based, because they feel uncomfortable not using their language. I mean, yes,
Cool.
they're really good tools that can translate it, but usually they are not built into the community directly. And even then, sometimes the translation, they are good, but not all of them are the best. So especially in community building, that can get really interesting when people don't have that barrier anymore, and they are not that shy anymore to communicate, because they're not that worried if they're making any mistakes, because they can use their natural language and yeah, are more open and more active.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My brain will spin off into all kinds of ideas for design futures for community, based on that. Like you've given me a lot of stuff to dream about there, because it's amazing. Like I'm even thinking now, like, wow, okay, so if I can have like a still image of myself, if I do an avatar of myself in a community, and I I've written a text-based post, I could then, if I'm consuming that, instead of like getting as a text-based post, if I'm looking at it on my phone, I could animate my avatar to actually speak what I've written in my text. So as a user, I can choose to consume it in whatever way I wish, whether visually, audio, or text. Um, I I see. I think like as we start talking about like removing some of those friction layers, I get excited about stuff like that, and the technology is so close to being able to do those kinds of things effectively. but
Yes.
scary at at the same time. So, well, Tanja, I feel like we should turn back briefly before we wrap up the stream today to talk a little bit more about ICD. So, International Community Day is the 8th of October, um, running through the full day. What kinds of events or programs can we expect from the day? What's happening? What have we got on tap so far for the event?
Yeah, we will have different kind of opening sessions throughout the day. So that's really adjusted to different kind of time zones. So you can tune in whenever you like, and it's suitable for you in your time zone. So it's not in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. or whatever. That will be on our side. And then we will have a couple of questions and interviews from local communities. I'm doing an Ask Me Anything community management session. So people can ask me everything they always want to know about community building. And everyone out there, if you're interested and you want to promote your session, go to internationalcommunityday.org and just fill in the form. Offer what you want to show us. Tell us about your community. Talk to us about how you onboard your members, how you engage them, how you interact with them. What was the last event you did? Really look forward to hearing all those cases and to talk with you and engage with you.
I love that, and especially the character of that reminds me of the format of like an unconference style event, where it's just the agenda is kind of decided on on the fly. Like we will have people coming in and saying, "Look, I'll talk about community management ideas, or I'll talk about building my local community, or we're just going to come in and chat together about whatever's on our mind about community building." I think that's amazing. We don't have enough events like that, and again, it's just a coming together and a celebration. At the same time, really, really powerful stuff. Maybe I don't know, Kalisa, if you have the link handy, we can maybe drop that up there. Thank you. So I feel like this is going to be a really fun time. So if you haven't already, there is an International Community Day LinkedIn company page that I think you can follow. Or maybe it's a group. I don't remember off the top of my head, but go out there, be sure to follow them, get the updates, sign up for a session, and come on in. There it is, internationalcommunityday.org. And we'll definitely see you there that day. Tanja, thank you so much for being on the show. It's lovely to see you again and to hear what's going on for you in your world.
It's been a pleasure. It was so great talking to you again. And yeah, I hope it's not too long until next time.
No, same here. And for those of you who have been following the show regularly, I wanted to put in a quick plug. The next show is going to be on October the 14th, Friday the October the 14th, at same time, 10 a.m. U.S. Central Time. Add a couple hours if you're over in Europe, and would love to have you guys join us. We're going to get kind of nerdy on the next one, where I get to combine two of my great loves: online tabletop role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, and community building. There is a method to this. I'm going to have on as my guest Joshua Celestnick, who runs a company called Playing for Keeps, where he does corporate training via D&D games. Amazing concept. Love what he's doing. And as we got talking, he started seeing some of the correspondences between helping people connect with each other across the table, whether it's virtually or in person, and sort of the lifelong friendships that form from that, as really the glue or the root of community building. And so we're going to be exploring that topic in the next session. I hope you join us. If it sounds cool to you, please drop out to the Clocktower Advisors YouTube channel and subscribe and sign up for a reminder for the event. And in the meantime, I will see you at International Community Day on October the 8th, full day. Check out the full lineup at internationalcommunityday.org. And in the meantime, take some time off this weekend, read a good book, enjoy yourself, go outside and get a breath of fresh air. And we will see you here on International Community Day on the 8th. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. Have a great weekend.